Welcome to the Vendetta Sports Media Daily Show. It is August 29th, and today we have myself and Matt. Matt, how's it going?
Doing all right, man. Doing all right. How about you?
Yeah, pretty good, pretty good. And we've got a decent chunk to talk about today, some interesting things in my opinion, so I'm excited to get into things.
Where do you want to
Um,
start?
yeah. And the first thing that we've got on the docket for today is Isaiah Simmons got shipped from Arizona to New York, the Giants, that is, for a seventh round pick. Simmons, obviously, top 10 pick a couple years back. Things haven't necessarily worked out well for him in Arizona, but now he's getting a fresh look over in New York. What's your reaction to Isaiah Simmons getting shipped off here right before the season starts?
I think it's a solid buy low move for the Giants. Like when Simmons came into the league, he was kind of labeled as this hybrid safety slash linebacker athletic freak from Clemson. Um, and like we thought that he was going to make a big impact, or at least like not was us two specifically, but like the consensus that he was going to make an impact. And it felt like he wasn't. I don't want to say used to the best of his ability, but it felt like he didn't have a whole much like he didn't have much of a role in Arizona. I mean, he's had a decent last couple of seasons, but for a guy who was I think like the eighth pick, something like that, um, you would obviously expect more. And they were kind of moving him all around the place, and I think he still might have that in New York. But the thing with New York is that I mean their defense wasn't great last year, and the thing with them is they have Wink Martindale as their defensive coordinator, and he's very like blitz heavy. He likes guys. He likes free rushers. And if you can kind of put him in that role, like I still think they're going to move him around. Like I know Arizona used him a lot in like the slot. He was like sometimes in the box as a linebacker, um, as a safety. Like they kind of moved him all around, and I think they're going to do the same thing with the Giants to an extent. But uh, I think he's going to be used more as like kind of a third down, second down blitz package guy who is the fifth or sixth rusher or whatever the case is, and that will definitely help. Obviously, put pressure on the quarterback. Um, and when you have a defense like the Giants' defense wasn't great, but it was like they got by. Um, but I think that I think the Giants were like pretty, if I can remember correctly, they were like pretty thin at linebacker, and in the secondary a little bit. So it feels a need, I guess, to some extent there. He only has one more year left on his contract because they declined his fifth-year option, they being Arizona. So like if he doesn't work out, I think you can get like a comp pick for that if I can remember correctly, and you you can extend him if he plays well for you at the season's end. And guess what? If he leaves in free agency, well, he only gave up a seventh round pick, and so really the cost is rather inexpensive. I don't think it's not like you gave up like a second round pick or a third round pick or whatever the case is. Like you could swallow it better if he just doesn't work out in New York this upcoming season because you only gave up a seventh round pick, which the success rate for seventh round picks is definitely not definitely not high. And so I think it's a good buy low move for the Giants. For obviously Arizona, you're not getting the return on investment you would have hoped for Isaiah Simmons in terms of like what he produced when he was in Arizona, in addition to what you received from New York in the trade. But uh, I wonder if this was just like the one of the only offers, or this was like the best offer, which it's hard to get lower than that if you're another team trading for someone. But uh, this is just an interesting move for the Giants. So it's like I like it, I guess. For
Yeah, I'm with you. And for the Giants, like you said, it's a seventh round pick. Like
yeah,
worst case scenario, he gets cut. Which I imagine he'll probably stick it out throughout the remainder of the year, anyways. But you're not really losing much value, and you're taking a high upside swing. Which the upside on Isaiah Simmons for a seventh round pick is a lot higher than a seventh round pick. Selecting a guy in that round. So in that aspect, it makes sense. And to me, it always feels like Isaiah Simmons has, I don't know if, not gotten a fair shake is the right word, but it feels like he has never really been put in a situation to succeed. And, I thought it was interesting when it was reported. I believe I want to say Schefter, but I'm not 100% positive. They reported it as safety slash linebacker. And yes, he is versatile, but I think like even that verbiage on it speaks to like Arizona never really found a role for him. And it's like they never really ironed out a position. And for any player, and really regardless of sport, it's hard to be successful if you don't have your role. If you don't know what the team is asking you to do, it's hard to go out there and fulfill what they want you to do. So in that regard, it's like if the Giants can snag him for a seventh round pick and kind of give him direction and say, like you said, maybe they just use him as a pass rusher, as a blitzer in passing downs. Maybe that's what they want to do with him. But even then, that role, even if it's just that one singular role, is like that direction is a positive in my opinion. So I like it in that regard. And like you said, Wink Martindale is a very good defensive coordinator. So if anyone can figure out what to do with this great athlete who he was taken, in the top 10 without NFL front offices knowing exactly what position they were going to play him at. That's how good he was at Clemson in this hybrid role. So a good defensive coordinator getting their hands on a player like that is, only beneficial in my opinion. So I think this could work out well for both the Giants and Isaiah Simmons. Obviously, 1 year left on the deal, so maybe it isn't long term. Maybe it's just this year, but regardless, I think it's going to be a positive. And for Arizona, I thought it was interesting that they were willing to give up on him this year. Like, I don't understand the downside in letting him play in Arizona. If you're Arizona, I don't see why you would want to ship him out for a seventh round pick. Why wouldn't you just want to let him play and get more reps on a team that probably isn't going to be competitive? So
No,
it's like they're in a position for Arizona where they could have kept Isaiah Simmons and look to maybe establish a role for him. So I thought it was a little interesting that they were willing to give up on him, considering where they're at as a team. Maybe he requested a trade, maybe a little behind the scenes, hey, this clearly isn't working out. I'd like a fresh start somewhere else. And maybe they were willing to oblige. Maybe that's how it went down. But it is a little interesting that they're willing to give up on him in a year where, in theory, he could have got a lot of reps doing something, whether it be safety, whether it be linebacker, however they wanted to use him. They could have found a role for him on a not great team.
and the thing with that is, it's like if they do use him in like cover zero packages or whatever, he's athletic enough to drop back if you need him to, and so you can kind of play that role. Again, I have no idea what role he's actually going to play, but just knowing how Wink operates, again, he's probably the most blitz heavy defensive coordinator in the league, or at least one of them. Um, and so he'll probably use him to some extent in that facet. I was looking here over the cap. You know how like they do like the cap space rankings next year. The Giants are in the top 10 in cap space available, so they have I think 53 million, or yeah, just about 54 million available in cap space. They're really middle of the pack in 2025 when practically every team has over 60, 70 million in cap space. The Giants have uh, just about 117 million. So it's not like they're strapped for cap next year if they do want to extend him. His cap hit this year is just less than 7 million. So again, it's not like it's a rookie contract, but it's not like an incredibly expensive rookie contract. And so again, you're willing to bite the bullet if you are the New York Giants. Um, and so there's different ways to use him, but like if they do extend him, then they have the money to, I guess.
Yeah. And this year, it's like, what else are you going to do with that cap number? It's like at this point in the year, there's probably not a lot of guys, and there's some guys left on the market, but probably not guys that the Giants would be, overly interested in going to get. It's a lot of running backs, and I doubt the Giants are willing to go pick a running back up off the market, especially one that would command that type of salary. So it's like they didn't really have a lot to that they could have spent this money on. So for this year, the financial risk is practically nothing. Long term, he plays well. You have the money to re-sign him. I really don't see a negative for the Giants in this whole scenario. So credit to the Giants for snagging a really, really good talent for 7 million or for a seventh round pick, excuse me, and they can see if they can turn him into a really, really good player. So this should work out pretty well for him.
Yeah, if they build up his value, who knows what's next for him?
Yeah, exactly. And then kind of another, highly touted prospect. This is not how do I word this? This is a lot different of a situation. We'll just say it's a lot different. And Trey Lance is, in a bad spot in San Francisco. We'll just say that he's in a bad spot. He has lost the backup quarterback role to Sam Darnold, and now he didn't show up to practice. And now there's questions as to whether he will stay in San Francisco. So, for Trey Lance, do you think he is pretty much on his way out of San Fran, or do you think this is a situation where he still has some life left in that building?
Well, I think at some point he's going to get traded.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the whole situation is just it's interesting to me because he's a guy. I remember seeing a stat on Twitter yesterday. I wish I could find it. I don't I can't pull it up right now, but I think someone tracked his preseason, regular season, and college like pass attempts, and it's like less than 500. And he's been in professional football, and he the last time he played in high school was like 2018, 2019, around that time. And so he's a guy who you trade up 9 spots, you trade 3 first-round picks to get up to number 3. There were reports surfacing at the time whether it's like, wait, is Kyle want Trey Lance? Is it Mac Jones? Like, what exactly does he want here? And there was a cloud hanging over that until they selected Trey Lance number 3 overall. He gets hurt his first season. I don't remember what exactly the injury was, but it was I want to say it was a pretty serious injury. He then does all right. I guess does all right in the preseason. I don't remember exactly what happened last year. He then plays in a monsoon in Chicago, week 1. And it's just like, all right, I don't know what to make of this, because it's like, this is probably his first time in about a year getting reps against first-string players. Well, yeah, the Bears defense isn't very good, but he's legit playing in a monsoon, and then breaks his ankle or something like that, like less than 5 snaps into week 2. I don't think he's looked good this preseason, but like my grand point is like, what am I supposed to make out of any of this? Because it's like he might not be an NFL starting card. He might not be an NFL caliber quarterback right now, but like we haven't seen him because he's been hurt and the lack of college experience. Like he only played 1 full season at North Dakota State, did well, and then the COVID shortened season comes and he only plays like 1 or 2 games, and then he declares for the NFL draft. It's just like what am I supposed to make of any of this? I don't know what to make of any of this, and it's just like, sure, he probably did get a fair shot this preseason against Sam Darnold for that backup quarterback spot, and he lost. But like, I'm not going to completely rule him out, but I'm not going to completely like buy in on his potential or what he can do, because it's like we've seen quarterbacks and players, but like some players just don't make it in the NFL. Like that's just the life of professional sports. Injuries happen. You get Wally pipped by someone or whatever the case is, and boom, you're out of the league. Like that happens all the time with players that we don't even hear about because they have like 1 or 2 years of experience in the NFL, and then boom, they're not on the roster. Like that's just the life. That's just the shelf life of the NFL, really just in professional sports, from a team aspect. And so but we've seen guys who also just kind of have to bounce around before they find a clear opportunity to succeed. And I don't think he's been unfairly treated, for example, because he's had so many injuries, and he kind of entered a situation where I don't even know if Kyle trusted him. And that's just the weird part of it. Like, that's just more speculation than fact. We won't probably ever know because Kyle probably wouldn't disclose that. And it is interesting because he wasn't successful in the system that benefited quarterbacks. But this was like a complete, practically wild card heading into the draft. We haven't seen much of him at all because he's been hurt. And when he is playing, it's preseason games against second or third stringers, probably some of which wasn't successful. But again, like, what do you expect from a guy who's coming off 2 serious injuries? I don't know what to expect. And it's certainly not a high expectation, regardless of who he's going up against. So I really don't know what to make of any of this. I'm guessing he's probably going to get traded at some point. I don't know where to. I know the Vikings link has been a spot for years because he's from Minnesota. He went to North Dakota State, which is close to Minnesota. So maybe that comes into fruition. Cousins has 1 more year left on his deal, plus I think a couple of like void years. Um, and so maybe that's a chance. I have no idea. Maybe I'm trying to think of like another team that like desperately needs a backup quarterback. I'm sure there's plenty of teams out there. So I'm guessing they're probably not going to get a lot for him because he is almost a depreciated asset at this point, even though he's entering his third year in the league. Because of his lack of playing time, there's so many question marks surrounding him. But I think at some point he's going to get traded. I think at least before the season. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, and it's been weird. Like you said, it's hard to evaluate him. Like he has been injured, and the thing about Trey Lance is that he's needed. Like he was never a guy who was going to get picked third overall and was going to come in and start day one. Like he was a guy who everyone knew needed to progress and needed reps and needed practice. And he didn't need to start his first year. So it's interesting in that regard where he's not necessarily a guy that can just come in and play well, and then he didn't even get the opportunity to progress because of those injuries, and he had two injuries back to back, and now we're running into year three where in the last 2 years how much better has he gotten? It's like it's hard to get better at football without playing football, and it's like as unfortunate as that is, it's like he hasn't, the injuries have held him back immensely, and at the same time, San Francisco has been in a position the last 2 years where they're serious contenders. It's like they can't just afford to let a quarterback play and kind of work out, this isn't a Josh Allen situation where he got to play a lot his rookie year and got to work through some of these kinks. Buffalo wasn't good. He got to work through some of that. San Francisco doesn't have, I guess it's not a luxury because you prefer to win. But he has been, they're not a team that can afford to let him progress throughout the course of a season. Like even this year, how can you punt at quarterback and let him progress when you have this roster and you have a team that can win the division and make a run in the playoffs? They're one of the better teams in the NFC. It's like it's now or never, and Trey Lance isn't ready. When you drafted him 2 years ago, you probably hoped heading into year three he'd be the guy.
Yeah,
And it's like he also wasn't like a slam dunk selection for them at pick 3. There was a large debate, and it sounds like there was a large internal debate over Mac Jones and Trey Lance. And if you look at the history of the quarterbacks in San Francisco under Shanahan, it's like Jimmy Garoppolo, Brock Purdy, Sam Darnold. It's like the archetype of that quarterback is a lot closer to Mac Jones, a guy that can make the right reads, make the right decisions. Trey Lance is a guy, a lot more explosiveness, a lot more athletic, a lot more run game upside, but that takes a little bit longer to develop. So there's this interesting dynamic of him not giving the time to develop, him being slightly different than the other San Francisco quarterbacks, where you can do different things with him that you can't do with the Darnold, that you can't do with the Purdy, but at the same time, those guys are a lot safer options, just based on their play style as well, which seems to fit San Francisco a lot more. So it's really an interesting dynamic, and since we don't know what to make of him, that also really clouds what do you trade for him if you're looking to trade for Trey Lance. If you trade for Trey Lance, can he be a backup? Can he be a guy that you can have be a backup for 2 years and then become a starter? 1 year, become a starter. It's like if you're trading for Trey Lance, it's hard to evaluate him as a player based off what he's done in the league. So it kind of makes it hard to create a plan. And I was kind of thinking about this, like what teams would be willing to trade for him. And to me, there's not really a ton because you either have your teams that just added a young quarterback, team like Houston, for example, no reason to. You have Stroud. Carolina's got Bryce Young. Indianapolis has Richardson. Tennessee has Levis. So it's like there's all these young quarterbacks already where you don't need to add Lance. And it's like there's other teams where why would we trade for Trey Lance when we're probably going to be in a position to take a quarterback in this year's draft? And this year's quarterback class coming up is, fairly deep and has some really, really good talent at the top. So even if you're not walking away with Caleb Williams or Drake May, you still may be walking away with a Joe Milton, a JJ McCarthy, a Penix. It's like there's other guys where they have the same upside as Trey Lance, and you don't have to trade for him, and you can kind of develop him, and they're already, 2 years younger on and they're still on their rookie deal. So it's really they're going to be in a tough spot in terms of finding a suitor for him. And in all honesty, I know you are a Minnesota fan, so and you've probably heard a lot about the Trey Lance connection to Minnesota, but I think it does make more sense for them because they're not
Yeah.
going to be in a position to go out there and draft one of these premier quarterbacks this year, and you can kind of prep for the post Kirk Cousins era. But outside of Minnesota, it's like, would they really want to add Trey Lance? Like the Raiders, for example, like they need a long-term quarterback, but do they really want to add Trey Lance? There's just not a ton of options for him, in my opinion.
Yeah, and like Aiden O'Connell has been awesome this preseason
Mm-hmm.
for Vegas, and so it's like in the scenario that Jimmy G gets hurt or he's not playing well or whatever, you have Aiden O'Connell who again has lit it up this preseason. Perhaps that translates to like week 13 or something. Like, I don't know. I mean, the Raiders do have an exceptionally tough schedule, but to give you some more perspective on how much Lance has played, I looked at it combined pass attempts. This is including the preseason, but combined pass attempts from the regular season in college and in the NFL. He's thrown 420 passes. Snap counts, they don't track snap counts in college, so I wish I could give you that information, but he's played a total of 262 NFL snaps. And he's thrown 102 passes, just to give you some more perspective. But like that's nothing.
Mm-hmm. And
That's
like you said, the game in the first game in the monsoon is like that's
yeah. What am I
literally
supposed to
like
take away
the
from that?
worst scenario to like develop, scout. It was a terrible game for a quarterback.
Yeah, like what am I supposed to take away from that? And then he
You-
snaps his leg in week 2. Like what? I don't know what to take away from any of this. I really don't. Again, he's probably not an NFL starting caliber quarterback right now, but that doesn't mean he won't be in the future if he gets an opportunity. That's a big if because again, as you kind of alluded to, there's not a lot of teams who would probably trade for him at this point and give him a starting opportunity. But I think just the kid wants an opportunity, and to his sake, I hope he gets it because again, it's just been an unfortunate situation for him. And like if Brock Purdy doesn't come out and light the world on fire after Jimmy G gets hurt in like week 10 or 11, whatever that was, then we wouldn't be even hearing about this because Lance is probably their guy, like he was at the beginning of last season. And so, yeah, I'm guessing he gets probably traded. When you mentioned like what he gets probably traded to, it's probably like kind of a similar Isaiah Simmons package, like a late day 3 pick or multiple like 4th, 5th rounders, whatever the case is. Like I don't think I'd give up that, but something along those lines. Because again, his trade value probably will never be lower. So
Yeah. Yep. The trade value is in the dumps. And, the last thing that really stands out to me with this whole Trey Lance thing is looking back at that draft class. It's like San Francisco, like there was
yeah,
the worst possible outcome for them in
yeah,
that draft. Like as
yeah,
far as quarterbacks go, that was a solid draft for quarterbacks. Obviously, they weren't getting Trey Lance. Zach Wilson goes 2. Justin Fields is probably the quarterback you want out of Fields, Jones, and Lance. But even at this point, Mac Jones has proved that if you put Mac Jones in San Francisco, that wouldn't be like, oh my God, this is a crazy team. But it's like Mac Jones would get the job done. It's like this is just the type of quarterback he is. He'd get the job done. But outside of the quarterback position, that draft is like hit, 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 hit. It's like all
yeah,
pro, all pro, all pro. There was like Chase, Waddle, Sewell, Surtain, Horn, Parsons. It's like you were getting incredible talent at like the 11, 12, 13 slots in that draft, which they passed on that to take Trey Lance and gave up immense draft capital to get from 12 to 3, like you said at the start of this.
yeah. And like just looking at this right now, like yeah, Pitts, Chase, Waddle, Sewell, J.C. Horn, Patrick 10, Devontae Smith, they make up the 4 through 10. So those are the teams that San Francisco passed on at 3. We had a feeling that they were leading quarterback. It's always very funny to me how like people were writing in pen that Zach Wilson was going 2. And it's just like, wait, you weren't even like doing your due diligence on any other options? Like what? That was a very funny process because like as soon as they got the number 2 pick, it's like, yep, Zach Wilson. It's like, wait, why wouldn't they consider Trey Lance or why wouldn't they consider like Mac Jones? Like, where's all this Zach Wilson left coming from? And I guess it's easier to say that in retrospect. But those are the guys that make up 4 through 10. Micah Parsons went 12, which is like going to be a funny moment in history when we look back on this, even like really now, but like 2 or 3, 4 years from now, it's like, man, they really passed on Micah Parsons, who was a good linebacker at Penn State. Rashawn Slater, Elijah Vera Tucker went 14 to the Jets. Mac Jones, Zaven Collins, Alex Leatherwood, Jalen Phillips, Kadarius Toney, Kwity Paye, Jamin Davis, Caleb Farley, Christian Darrisaw went 23 to Minnesota. Again, I don't think they were going to draft like most of these guys at 12, but like Parsons and Slater and Vera Tucker, like even I can remember that those guys were at least in consideration to be like top 15 guys. And so it's like it wouldn't be crazy for them to draft either one of them. Again, once they traded 3 first-round picks to go up from 12 to 3, it was like, okay, they're probably leaning quarterback because they just didn't like how the Jimmy G experience was going. But like 3 first-round picks, it's funny because the 3 first-round picks, they used it to trade for Tyreek Hill and Bradley Chubb last year, and then they also selected Jalen Waddle. So like those are the 3 picks that you traded away that Dolphins smartly used. And now the Dolphins are one of the best teams in the AFC East. And if Tua stays healthy, could be a legit AFC contender. It would be tough. But like that just gives perspective because the talent that they got using those picks that you traded away for a guy that you weren't even sure that you were going to take. Like it's crazy to look at that in retrospect and being like, man, like they really swung and missed on this. It's one of the worst trades that probably like John Lynch is a good GM. Because he has hit on players, but he really missed with this. He really missed with this. And this was just, again, an unfortunate situation. The longer you do this, the more you miss as a GM, evaluator, whatever the case is. That just happens. But sheesh, it's not a good look in hindsight.
No, he gave up. He not only did he miss, but he gave up a lot to miss.
Right.
It's like the process was bad, the selection was bad, and I'll tell you what, being a team sitting in that 4 through 10 spot, they were like you could have picked a name out of a hat and ended up with an All-Pro. It's like they literally didn't even have to scout. They could have just gone, all right, these are the guys that are going. Give me so and so, and it's like they end up with an elite player at that position. So that draft class is going to end up going down as something special. And kind of moving away from the Trey Lance, and this is a situation that now for the second daily show that you and I have done together, we've got to have a conversation about something that Stephen A. Smith said. Last time he said DeMarcus Cousins would be a top 5 big man in the league today. This time it's a little bit of a different situation where him and Lonzo Ball are going back and forth over injuries. Do you just want to provide the context here for the people that don't know that may be watching the little back and forth that Stephen A. and Lonzo had?
Well, to kind of give you and the viewers the summary, it really it was like a few days ago where Stephen A. Smith said on First Take that he heard like reports or he reported that it was difficult for Lonzo Ball to like get up and sit down. Of course, as we know, Lonzo Ball's had like 3 surgeries over the last 3 knee surgeries over the last couple of years. He's not going to play again this season, which was reported, I think, it was like last week or pretty recently. The Bulls did apply for the disabled player exception, which in summary, you can use that money to sign someone, and that means the player would be out for the season anyways. I don't think they haven't used it yet, but it got reported again a week ago that Lonzo was going to likely miss the entire season, which is understandable because again, he just recently had this. It's like his 3rd or 4th surgery, whatever it was. And Lonzo tweeted a video from like his. I don't know if it was his pool or someone's pool, probably his pool, in like Cali, or at least I'm guessing it was Cali.
Nice pool, by the way.
Very nice. It was just very nice view.
Yeah.
But he was getting up and sitting down on his leg that he had surgery on. and he was just like Stephen A. Smith, like I'm practice. I don't remember exactly what he said. But he's like, I'm doing this. Like where are you getting like these reports from or something like that? And then Stephen A. made a big no on I think it was the Stephen A. Smith show, where he's just he tends to go off the rails with whatever, which is it's good entertainment and it's funny. But this is kind of where you kind of cross the line. He brought Lonzo's doctors into this, which I don't know if you're aware of this, but that's a HIPAA violation. If you do that, if you disclose someone's medical records without their consent, that's a HIPAA violation. And so he was just like, yeah, man, like those doctors, like I know who those doctors are, even though it's none of my business. So he's saying, well, yeah, I went out of my way to get who the doctors like, who did your surgery. Like I got the names of those people, but it's none of my business. It's none of my concern. It's just like, wait, that doesn't make sense. If it's none of your business, and why'd you try to get their information? Like that's a weird move. It's a weird thing to say. But he kind of went personal, and he was just like, really, dude, like you did this, like why, like you're kind of like, again, like you're stooping down to this level, like, dude, like I'm trying to remember exactly what he said because I don't have it in front of me, but it was something along those lines where he was just like, he disclosed medical records, not medical records, but he found out who the doctors were, which is a no. He kind of played it off like that he was kind of better than Lonzo Ball to an extent. He was just like, really, dude, like I'm Stephen A. Smith, like, you know. Let me see if I can find like the official quotes, right? Because that was a terrible description of what Stephen A. recently said. But
it was
just also, reached a new low.
It is baffling that like if you're a doctor and someone's asking you for information on a patient, obviously you don't say anything because that right. is against the law. But if you are talking to Stephen A. Smith, a guy that has the ability to reach millions of people with the words that he says, that is definitely the last guy that you ever want to tell someone's medical information to. Yeah. Someone with the ability to spread that information with millions of people. That in itself is like, I don't know. Unless Stephen A. is blatantly lying about talking to his doctors, which is a possibility. I wouldn't be overly shocked if that was just him trying to cover his tracks. But like, if you're a doctor telling Stephen A. Smith information about a client, that is, what are you doing? It's insane.
Yeah, right. So here I pulled up something from the New York Post. Quote: You're gonna call me yapping when I have all this information in front of me. Would you like me to tell you where you had the surgery and exactly what dates you had the surgery on? Would you like me to get the names of the doctors? I do have them. I know the actual doctors that operated on him. And then he finished off with saying, I'm going to be nice because I got love for you, bro. I want you to get back healthy. Doesn't seem like it.
No. Doesn't seem like he has any love for him. Not only does the initial report on his leg not make it seem like he has love for him, but then the follow-up also makes it seem like he does not have love for him. Yeah. And also, I have a question. Do you think Stephen A. does this if it's anyone other than Lonzo Ball, just because of Lonzo Ball's history from the draft?
It's a good question.
Lonzo Ball is still a big name to a lot of people just because of the whole fiasco that happened with his dad when he got drafted.
Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe not, but I mean, he hasn't done it about anyone else that I know of. And hopefully this is the last.
Hopefully he learns a lesson not to do that.
Yeah, don't say, hey, I know where you got your surgery. I know who operated on you. Like, that's, again, a HIPAA violation. And that's it's not the best thing to say. And I don't know who would get in trouble for that. I mean, I'm guessing both Stephen A. and the doctors. But it's not great. Imagine if he was lying. Like, imagine if you're a doctor and you're like, I didn't tell him crap. Like, what are you talking about? So that opens up a different can of worms that becomes even more disastrous. It's just like, wait, he's lying about all this. I didn't tell him anything.
Also,
Uh,
if he did, there's like a doctor that's like risking his. If no, honestly, if you're a doctor that's operating on NBA players, you're probably making quite a bit of money. You're
yeah,
probably a very, very good doctor, and you're like that. That's like a career ender right there. Like you're risking your career to tell Stephen A. Smith things about a guy's surgery. That is just
yeah.
that's insane.
What's the upside of that?
No,
You're a
nothing.
doctor. You're just like, what's the upside of me disclosing that I operated on Lonzo Ball? Like, that's not
Apparently, the
like there are the
doctor just
times where
likes
it's
yapping.
like, there are the times where it's like, oh, this surgery was done by like doctor. I think it was like Dr. James Andrews, who's like a
Mhm.
famous sports surgeon who's done surgeries on everyone. I don't know if he still is, but like I remember that's a thing from time to time where it's like a serious like ACL surgery. Like reporters will disclose, oh, operated on blank, or whomever operated this surgery is blank. But for this, it's like it's definitely not the same thing at all.
Yeah. And in that regard, it's probably the players like using that as like players or agents maybe using that as like a hey, my client will get healthy. Like when you can strap a well known doctor that does very very good work, and you can kind of attribute your surgery to that doctor. There's like another level of confidence that they can recover. So it's like in that regard, it makes sense for the player to be like, yeah, this guy did my surgery.
Yeah,
But the doctors don't get to be like, I operated on that guy, that guy, that guy. I did it back in October and whatever hospital. It's like, man, what are you doing? Um,
and the fact that Lonzo was right. Like Stephen A. specifically said that you had a hard time getting up and sitting down from a chair. Well, guess what Lonzo Ball did in I don't know how long the video was, like 30-second minute, whatever. He got up and was sitting down on one leg, on the leg that he operated on,
yeah.
or
Well,
he
trash
had
talking
operated on.
Stephen A. Smith. He was
Yeah,
trash
and
talking him as he was sitting down.
right. And so Stephen A was wrong, and then now he opened up just a complete can of worms that was definitely not necessary. He could have
No.
definitely avoided this. This is not this. This was a completely avoidable situation. I know it's like an ego thing, but like, there's much better ways to handle this. You know, there's far better ways to handle any of this, and it's like I know Stephen A. Smith is like the biggest personality in sports, or one of the biggest personalities in sports, and that's not anything new. But there is like an ethical violation, like a
Mm.
personal ethical violation that you have when you do the job that you do, whether you're in whether you're just starting or whether you're 20, 25 years, 30 years experience, whatever the case is, like you should create a personal code of ethics. That's some like journalism 101. Uh, and so like that feels like a violation. Again, that might not be in Stephen A's ethical journalism code, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Again, there's much better ways to handle it, and he did not handle it the right way, really at all.
In my opinion, it's kind of like you get to the pinnacle. Like Stephen A. Smith is kind of at the pinnacle of sports journalism, where he has surpassed like being the beat reporter that puts in all the hours following a team. He now, has his own show and can just comment and he can just provide commentary on things. And no matter what he's talking about, it's gonna get views. So it feels to me like the ego has gotten to the point where it surpassed the code of ethics almost, where it's like
Yeah,
I'm Stephen A. Smith. Now I can throw the code of ethics behind.
yeah. Like, don't lesson learned. Don't disclose the name. Don't even try to find that information out if it's none
No.
of your business.
Also,
And
it's
that's
not
the
like this
thing.
was
He
like a
followed up. He's just like, nah, that's none of my business. That's none of my concern. It's just like, wait, why'd you go out of your way to find that out? Like, if it's none of your business, then why are you doing this? Like, it's not
it's
like those doctors
interesting.
hit him up and were just like, yo, bro, like we operated on his surgery. Like, no, that probably was not the case.
Yeah. And it's like this was not breaking news. Like this wasn't like a big massive news story that he tried to add information to. Like
Yeah,
this was just him like seeking out like information and commenting on something that was it's noteworthy, but it's not like this was like a story that he was like trying to like add information to. It was just like him going out and being like, we'll talk about this today. Very, very strange. Very strange.
yeah. It's to get clicks.
Yep. It in hindsight, it got a lot of clicks. Whether those are the type of clicks you want or not, I'd probably say no, but you know, That's up to him. And then another injury, which is also not that fun to discuss because we have Shohei Ohtani tore his UCL and he will not pitch for the remainder of 2023. This is the when I think about Shohei, I don't know about you, but I think about baseball because baseball isn't I that's a weird way to phrase that, but I think about the growth of the sport rather would be a better way to put it. Because right now, baseball is in a fight for viewership, and there's a handful of players that do a great job of pulling in views for the sport and putting eyes on the sport. Shohei Ohtani is one of those guys, and for the rest of the year, he is out with the UCL, at least pitching wise, and I mean, this is not necessarily a great look long term either because this could have some lingering effects for his pitching career as well.
Yeah, and it's just like there's not a great track record of guys who have gotten multiple Tommy John surgeries in a short amount of time. Uh, and the thing that's most interesting to me about this, it's like he's probably going to continue to play DH throughout the rest of the season. And I think they're probably, if he has to have Tommy John surgery, I think they're going to postpone that until the end of the season. I mean, what they really could do, if I'm being completely honest, and they can just shut him down because it's like they're 10.5 games out of the final wild card spot. They're not in contention like we thought they may have been after the trade deadline. And so this is just an unfortunate situation for him. But this is also just completely impacts his free agency market. It's like, what if he never pitches again, but like, what if he's considerably worse than he was prior to this? Like what are the ramifications of throwing him out there it's not every 5th day for him because they have like 6 days of rest in Japan, and so that's how it kind of operated. But like every 6th day, like what if you just run him out there every 6th day for 6 innings or whatever? Like what are the long-term, really short-term and long-term ramifications of that? What would you be willing to pay if you're a team who wants to use him in that role, as well as like him being your DH on the days that he's not pitching? Does this increase the Angels' odds of getting him in free agency? Like we've had these discussions, we meaning like the company, on countless daily shows about, okay, where is he going to go? At the time before the trade deadline, it was like, all right, is he going to get traded? Where are some possible destinations? Like, what type of contract is he going to get? Now it's like, how much of that has that been just completely slashed? Like, are their team still willing to give him 400 or 500 million over 10, 12 years, whatever the case is? Like, what exactly? Like, he's awesome. He's obviously an awesome hitter. He hit his 44th home run, I think, yesterday or 2 days ago. Like, obviously one of the best two-way players we've ever seen, maybe the best two-way player that we've ever seen. And so like, how much does this change his future? But like, not just him, what his role is, but like, where is he going to go in free agency? Like, is he still going to go to the Dodgers? Are they still going to be the highest bidder? Is he going to go to the East Coast? Is he going to stay with the Angels for another year or two? Because it's like the Angels are completely out of the race right now. Mike Trout also went to the IL. And so it's like they're 10.5 games out. There's really no path for them to make the playoffs and over the next like month. That's just not a realistic possibility for them. And even then, they have to fight their way in with the wild card games. So, actually, no, they eliminated that now. What am I thinking? They still have the first round game, but they still have a good chance to make the playoffs. And so it's like, what's the upside of playing him at DH and just getting the surgery done now? So there is a quicker time for recovery, or not a quicker time for recovery, but like maybe you can ensure he's ready by next August or something, or next September, if he even plays at all next year, if he has Tommy John surgery, at least on the pitching side of things. Because for pitchers, it takes longer to recover from a torn UCL and Tommy John surgery than it does for hitters, because obviously you're using your arm so much when you're pitching. And when you're DH, like, yeah, obviously it affects when you swing, but it's not as drastic. And so I have these lingering questions in my head again for the sport of baseball in general. It sucks. And I hope for a speedy recovery. They haven't officially declared whether he is going to get Tommy John yet, so there's still the possibility that he might not. Like I know, I mean, I'm throwing back the Yankee history a little bit, but Masahiro Tanaka, when he tore his UCL like 2014, 2015, he was a pitcher. I don't think he had Tommy John surgery, and so he just continued pitching with a semi-torn UCL, I think, or at least I don't think that fully recovered. I'm trying to remember like exactly what happened, but like there are some instances where maybe it's not as big of a tear as others. Again, we don't really know this information, and so maybe he won't get it. I haven't heard anything that he is or isn't.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe there's a possibility that he is. I don't think he's not going to pitch for the rest of the season, but maybe there's the possibility that he does pitch for the next few years or whatever the case is without having Tommy John surgery. I have no idea.
Yeah.
It sucks in general because it's like, how long is he going to keep pitching? Is he going to going to continue to be this two-way star? Like again, because this is his second Tommy John surgery. Like Jacob DeGrom's a perfect example. It's a little different because it's like he's had other injuries. I think like shoulder injuries, uh, but he's had multiple Tommy Johns and he just hasn't found a way to stay healthy.
Yep. And
there are other examples of it, but yeah.
Yeah, and it's like Shohei also, injuries have been a major concern throughout his whole, like, since he came to the MLB. Like, injuries have been a massive, massive concern as to whether he can hold up pitching and hitting. And for a really long time, a lot of people thought he needed to drop one just because, the tax on your body, it was not plausible. He eventually proved those doubters wrong, and strung together some really, really great seasons where he was able to stay healthy. And when he was healthy, man, it's ridiculous what he was able to accomplish last year and thus far into this year. So it's like, in that regard, now we're getting to the point where now he's going to be entering free agency, and every single one of those injury questions that people were discussing years ago, all of those concerns are going to resurface, and the two and three really, really, really healthy seasons are going to get put on the back burner because of this injury, and all of those injury concerns are going to come right back to the top. And I don't know about you, but to me, it really feels like if you keep him out there the remainder of this year to hit, it kind of feels like they're just seeing how many home runs he can hit. In all honesty, he's at 44. He's on a really great pace. There's no reason he can't get to 60. Like, there's no reason he can. They're not, like you said, they're not making the playoffs, especially with Mike Trout going back on the IL. Like, there's no chance to make the playoffs. So to me, it feels like they're just keeping him in the lineup just to see how many home runs he can hit. So when you look back at his 2023 season, the numbers are going to jump off the page. And it's going to be one of the best seasons of all time. But long term, is that worth it? Like, yeah, he can get to 60 home runs. That'd look really, really cool. But is that worth it for him long term? And, maybe the Angels would be approaching this differently if it wasn't his last year, in all honesty. If they had him under contract for 2 more years, maybe they wouldn't be so bullish on keeping him in the lineup. Maybe they'd be, much more conservative in getting him out of the lineup and repairing that injury. Well, they're not in playoff contention. So I think that's an interesting thing to think about, where I don't see the point in keeping him in the lineup at this point of the season at all.
Neither do I.
Yeah. And do you think that, I mean, the reports have been he's going to keep hitting. Do you think it's going to stay like that throughout the year?
Probably, but I wouldn't feel great about it if I were them.
No, neither would I.
I mean, I get it from the perspective of like, yeah, you want to see perhaps the last moments of Shohei before he departs in free agency, but like, how much is it worth it?
Exactly.
He's hurt. He's playing hurt. Why would you try to risk that? Even more so than it already is. I mean, I'm sure he wants to play, but I don't know. It feels fishy.
Mm-hmm. And just because he wants to play doesn't mean he should play. Like,
exactly.
Sometimes
every athlete wants to play.
Yep. Athletes a lot of times are too tough for their own good. It's like sometimes you got to tell a guy, hey, you shouldn't be playing on that bum knee. And in Shohei's case, hey, you shouldn't be playing with that bum elbow. Because it's like, as competitive as he is, it's like statistically, numbers-wise, mathematically, it doesn't matter what you do the rest of the year. You're going home at the end of the regular season. 162 is all you get. You know, hell, you can get hot as hell and get to 70 home runs, and you're still not making the playoffs. I don't see the point.
Yeah, I would shut him down. Give him the surgery if he needs it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't try to get too cute with this. It just doesn't make sense. Like, I get people again. People want to see Shohei. Every athlete wants to play. Guys could break their nose and break their arm, but they're like, guys, I can still do this. Like, no, it's not. It's not always that simple. So, yeah, I wouldn't play him, but that's just me.
I'm with you. I'm with you. We're sitting here at 50 minutes. Usually, when the two of us are on the Daily Show, we're fighting for time and don't have extra time. Do you have anything else that you want to throw in here, or you want to shut it down early? Either way, I don't want to cut you off if there's anything on your mind that you want to get off it.
I'm trying to think of like everything else that's happened. Damian Lillard came out this morning and had an interview with Mark Spears, and he didn't look very happy during that interview. Just because they asked about like the trade rumors and stuff, and he was just like, I don't want to speak on Portland's behalf, and he looked visibly like it appears there's going to be a point in time like mid-September where he's going to start theoretically flipping the tables, waiting for something to happen. I know Spears also did report that he's gotten like he's talked to multiple players, including like Mo Williams and like a few other guys, and the advice given to him is just like remain patient with this process. And so again, from like, since I have the flag behind me, I'm obligated to talk about Dame, or I'm obligated to mention anything Damian Lillard for, even if it's really nothing. But I'm trying to think of like
that's a tough spot for like at this point. Like when he requested the trade, if you would have asked me, hey, did this drag into mid-August? At this point, hell, it's late August. I would have said no. Like, it's almost like today's the 24th. It's like we're going to be in September before we know it. It's like, and it doesn't seem like there's a trade on the horizon. And the James Harden situation has been shut down. And it's like, what? Like, it's tough because it's like, is Miami going to budge and suddenly offer much more than what they have been offering? Is Portland going to budge and magically accept much less than they've been, willing to accept? It's like, do you see an end to this anytime soon? It's kind of frustrating in all honesty because we're getting to the point where this has got to get solved before the start of the season.
I think Portland will budge before Miami does. And I say that from the perspective of I don't think you can bring Damian Lillard into training camp with how frustrated he appears. Because it's like the worst possible outcome for Portland right now with their currently constructed rosters to have Dame on it, because they're going to be like an 11 or 12 seed or a 10th seed. If you trade him and get pieces back, regardless of what you get back, you're probably going to be the worst team in the West.
Mm-hmm.
Or one of the worst teams in the West. And so I think it'll come when Dame like makes it more ugly, which I don't know what he's going to do to make it more ugly. But I think by the time mid-September rolls around, people are going to start sweating. And so that's when I think it eventually gets done. But again, that's an optimistic prediction from a guy who has a flag behind him. So,
do you think Damian Lillard plays if he doesn't get traded? Like you said, it doesn't make any sense for Portland, like with the roster construction. What?
I think he plays.
Okay.
And I say that from the perspective of like Dame's just a guy who loves to hoop
and
loves to play basketball, and I don't think he wants to risk that. He's like the Kevin Durant. Like Kevin Durant, for as much shit as he gets for like what he says on social media and stuff, which I personally love, but he's just a guy who loves to hoop, and like that's Damian Lillard as well. I mean, so I think he will play, but he's gonna be pissed as shit they didn't get traded.
Yeah,
and I don't think he's gonna pull like a James Harden where he purposely like throws away games, but I think there's gonna be a point in time where it's like Joe Cronin's gonna be like, all right, we have to like get moving on this, because he's probably going to hear people, if he hasn't already, being like, dude, you can't risk bringing this guy into training camp, which training camp doesn't begin until October, like early October 3rd. And so like there's still time, But I think when mid-September rolls around, it's going to be like, oh, like we probably should at least discuss with Miami, because there's been reports that they just haven't discussed at all because Portland just doesn't want to, which isn't great if that gets leaked. But I think at some point they're going to have discussions, and it's going to be probably a 3 or 4 team trade or whatever the case is. But that's where I think it's at right now. But it's just fun. We're now at the stage of Damian Lillard having sit down interviews with national NBA reporters saying, hey, I'm confirming this trade request myself, but I don't want to speak on anyone's behalf or else I'm going to get fined. You know, like I want to compete for a title. This is the best situation for me. This is the place where I want to go, but I don't want to speak on anyone's behalf because, again, the league has already sent out a memo saying, like, hey, if you trash them or whatever, there's going to be punishment. So,
Also, the league and their fines for players saying things is ridiculous. Like James Harden got $100,000 for his comments on Daryl Morey. Like, hey, 100,000 is quite the sum for calling one guy a liar.
And max of 100,000 too. Like it's the new max. It was 50,000 before the new CBA. It's literally doubled, which I didn't know until the fine got disclosed. But yeah, the max of 100,000.
That's insane in itself. That of all the things that changed in the new CBA, they were like, "Hey, let's make sure we can fine players twice as much as we were before."
Yeah.
It's like that's the thing. They were like, "Oh, make sure you slip that in there."
Yeah, like make sure the Players Association doesn't see this. Put it on page 512, the bottom of the page.
Hopefully nobody reads it.
Yeah, see if they read through it and someone sees it.
Last thing that I want to say on Dame, you said he doesn't seem like the guy to throw away games. To me, he seems like the guy that's going to will them to too many wins.
That's like exactly what I'm saying in terms of like, this is the worst case scenario for Portland if they're just like, yeah, we're going to bring this guy into camp. We don't want to trade him. And it's just like, this guy is going to get you like the 10th seed. If you keep him there for a full season, like let's say you hypothetically hold him past the deadline. It's like, this is a dude that'll get you like the 11th, like the 10th or 11th seed.
They won't get to 10. They won't get the satisfaction of the play-in. They'll get to 11.
Oh, okay. All right. More than fair. More than
they'll
fair.
They'll be stuck in the 12 spot of the lottery.
But like if Scoot is really that good,
yeah,
you just want to bring in the guy who you plan on replacing him with. Like that doesn't make sense.
No, it's
like
really
that. Dumb. That I mean, really they still have Simons. They still have Chris Murray, who I like. I mean, he's not guard or anything, but like they still have some young pieces. But like I get it. Miami's probably not offering a lot because they don't have to, because there's no other team that's willing to trade for Dame at this point. So Miami's just kind of sitting there being like, yeah, we gave you an offer. We have to now negotiate to a middle ground, because it's like one team has one extreme, the other team has another extreme, which are on polar opposite ends. Negotiation means you try to find the middle ground, or at least something close to the middle ground. And so Portland's not going to accept Miami's offer. I get that. That's completely understandable. Miami's probably offering 35 cents on the dollar right now because they can.
Yeah.
But at some point, you're going to have to negotiate and at least try to find Dame a home and do right by the greatest player who's ever played for your franchise, instead of not holding him hostage, but just kind of being like, nah, we're not going to discuss with Miami. It's like, why? What's the point of that?
Do you think there was any legitimacy to the 3-team possibility of Harden, Lillard, and the swap that would send? Wait, it would have been a 4-team. The Harden to LA. People were cooking up the crazy trade machine trades. Do you think there's any ever legitimacy to those, or do you think those are just crazy trade machines?
Those are trade machines. Okay. I don't think that's I mean, it'd be funny as hell if that was a real thing, but I don't think so.
Okay. I was like 95% sure that's what they were, but I wanted to double check with you, get your thoughts, and just make sure those were crazy trade machines.
I mean, listen, a lot of people like to cook up trade machine stuff. So,
yeah, I don't blame them. It is kind of fun, but
it is fun. You know what you're doing. It is fun. I've seen people create like 6 or 17 Dame Lillard trades, and it's just like, all right, this is kind of what I'm rooting for at this point.
Yeah.
Who cares? Hell to the boring 2-team. Let's trade Dame for a few assets plus picks. Like, no, dude, let's cook up some like 4 or 5 team, 6 team, whatever the case is. But
we've been waiting
for like a 20-player trade or just something completely out of just something completely out of this world. But that's the crazy person in me that wants that.
I'm with you. We've been waiting for months. When the trade finally goes down, let's make it memorable.
If it does, again, there's still like the 2% of me that is like, what if this doesn't happen?
Yeah.
But I think there's too much smoke for that to not happen.
Mm-hmm.
That would suck if it didn't happen, at least for me.
Yeah.
Because again, I'm the guy with the flag behind me, but
I can't blame you. That'd be tough thinking you were getting Damian Lillard for months and then end up empty-handed.
Not getting him at all. Just running it back.
Oh man. All right. Well, we're at the hour mark and we squeezed in a little Damian Lillard update at the end, so that worked out pretty well. Thank you to everyone who tuned in to the daily show, and we'll be back tomorrow. Two more people sitting in on the daily show for the last day of the week, Friday. Make sure to subscribe to vendettasportsmedia.com. Read the website, subscribe to Vendetta Sports Media on YouTube. Read the website, vendettasportsmedia.com. We got it backwards, but that's all right. You know what I'm talking about. And thank you to everyone who tuned in. We'll see you next time.